Welcome to the Lightning 50 e-commerce growth hacking podcast. Want to turn your business into a cash-generating machine? You've come to the right place. This bite-sized podcast reveals the technology secrets fueling the world's fastest-growing online brands. And for our host, we have retail industry expert Caroline Baldwin. She'll be sharing her own wisdom and experience as she interviews high-growth e-commerce brands to uncover their secret tech tools and tips for success. Let's get started on supercharging your growth. Here's Caroline.
Hello, and welcome to this special edition of the Lightning 50 e-commerce growth hacking podcast. I'm Caroline Baldwin. I'm a business journalist who is delighted to have you join myself and Sara Arthrell, the CMO of Brightpearl, to talk about fast-growing e-commerce brands and some of the trends that we've been seeing from our Lightning 50 league table. Sara, it's so wonderful to speak to you again. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. The sun is shining here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's a bit cold, but I'll take the sun. It's been raining for the last couple of days, so
it's starting to get that time of year where we're seeing signs of spring, and we know it's not too far away.
Definitely.
Super. So tell our audience a little bit about the Lightning 50. I'm sure a lot of them are already aware of the program that we run, but tell them a little bit about it and why it's a really important measurement of success right now.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great question to get started with. So the Lightning 50 is basically a ranking that we did of the fastest growing e-commerce businesses between the US and the UK from the last 12 months. So I think myself and probably others that you've spoken with, Caroline, sound a bit like a broken record here, but we are coming off of another totally unprecedented year in commerce and for merchants. You've got excess inventory issues, supply chain challenges, cost of living crisis, inflation. I think the list sort of goes on. And the Lightning 50 is really designed to just bring a lot of much deserved recognition to brands who not only survived this craziness, but actually grew and thrived on it. It's almost sort of like that metaphorical pat on the back for doing an amazing job when maybe the cards felt like they were stacked against you a bit. And so I think it's really just to give some accolades to the brands that have done an amazing job, and also just bring awareness about certain trends that those brands have seen that could really, bring other improvements to commerce leaders and things like that, and for them to consider as they think about growing their business next year.
Definitely. We'll need a bit more positivity in the world, and I'm sure we'll touch on some of those challenges. But tell me a little bit about some of the key insights that came out of this Lightning 50 this year. So I think there were some great fashion brands on there, some brilliant female-led businesses, some really interesting pockets of growth in various cities in both the US and the UK. So talk me through some of your favorite trends.
Yeah, we you hit a number of them. So we did see a lot of more fashion dominated brands. I think in the UK, it made up about 20% of the list and about 25% of the US winners. But we also saw a lot of brands committed to sustainability, one of my favorite topics. So brands like very cool fashion brand called Freedom Rave Wear, which specializes in bright and colorful festival clothing, Passenger Clothing, which is a surf and sort of lifestyle apparel brand. They saw some tremendous growth, as well as Pinter, which is this very cool beer enthusiast brand. And all of those brands are really committed to sort of the sustainability aspect of what it is that they do. We also saw, as you mentioned, a lot of incredible performance from these sort of female nominated or female entrepreneur led brands. And I think, obviously, as a female in this business, it's always exciting to see that. Kate and Lane, who you might have heard of, they're a children's boutique. They saw 132% year-over-year growth. There's this very cool art display sort of business brand that's actually based out of Austin. They saw 90% year-over-year growth. And then one of my favorites, J. Brooks Boutique, is this very cool women's clothing brand. They saw 170% year-over-year growth. So it's exciting to see just the leadership coming from the US female entrepreneurs in particular. And then, we also saw, you said sort of the neighborhood pockets, London and the Northeast UK were some real hotbeds, which is awesome. And then somewhat surprisingly in the US, the top 10 winners we're actually dominated by Southern brands from states like Kentucky and Texas and Missouri, a little bit further north, Georgia, things like that, which I think is really interesting too.
I wonder what it is that's taking, that innovation out of London or San Francisco and New York, those hotbeds that you'd normally see that kind of innovation. It's fantastic to see, and it's fantastic for both countries as well, surely.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's probably, one of the benefits that came out of just the pandemic was the fact that those hotbeds, they always had lots of people in them, but those people moved too and sort of spread their wings and went into different areas. And I think just moving the whole world online probably opened up a lot of opportunity for businesses and brands to really diversify their business and to go places where maybe was their home at one point, but they had sort of moved to those hotbeds for career reasons. And now it's really cool to see it like diversifying across the country and countries, even the UK.
Again, seeing positivity to coming out of something so negative. And
we need it.
I know. And moving on to going back to what you're saying about women, because it is approaching International Women's Day at the minute. So let's talk and delve into that a little bit, which is fantastic. So you mentioned some of the brands that were female-led businesses and, they dominated the US Lightning 50 list. I'd love to know what they're doing, what are these brands doing right? I'd love to say it's because they've got a female CEO, but I'm sure there's tech they're supporting as well. Equally, probably what you said a minute ago in terms of COVID, maybe these businesses were side hustles back at, before, and then COVID accelerated these and actually, or gave women the confidence to actually, this can be my full-time job now and I'm doing really, really well.
Yeah, we definitely saw a lot of that latter point. I think especially when, as we often see when times get challenging, it's the emergence of really cool technologies and new advancements in the industry. And we definitely saw that over the last couple of years that I think let sort of that side hustle become the main hustle, and really give them the opportunity to grow. I think what a consistency that I've seen as I talk to our customers and particularly the female CEOs and these merchants is they have this like ability to really innovate. And it's not just innovating with whatever like product that they're bringing to the table or, customer experience and things like that, but it's more the innovation behind like their real brand, like what the voice of that brand is. And I mean things like sustainability, which I talked about, but like diversity and inclusion and really doing things for like the betterment of the world. And that message really resonates with younger generations, especially, but I think that that's growing even year over year. And my prediction is that will continue to sort of take off, and that it's not enough to sort of say we're in a sustainable brand, but they have to sort of put like proof behind that. And they're doing it with the way that they treat their customers, how they market themselves, the types of technology that they use. They're partnering with other technologies that also see value in that sustainability aspect. And it's been really interesting to see, particularly with, female leadership, really take that into consideration and make that a part of their identity as a brand.
And that's the thing, isn't it, as well? Because customers, it's on sustainability and diversity and inclusion is, it's the buzzwords of today. Everyone knows that businesses should be doing a lot more in this space. And I think customers can immediately see if it's not been doing with like authenticity and intent, and if it's just a bit of greenwashing or touching on, sponsoring pride, but not actually like helping your workforce and supporting them all the way through the year. So any of those businesses, which is so brilliant about SMEs as well, the fact that you can, as a CEO, have your fingers on all parts of your business and really, really help drive that growth and make sure that that's important and is through all of those business objectives. Because customers are easily go elsewhere if they smell a rat, right?
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. Yeah, the authenticity that you mentioned is critical, and they've gotten better at, I think, smelling the rat. So it's like each year they're looking for more and more proof that like, okay, this brand that I'm buying from is actually doing things that I believe in. And research actually shows that brands that do focus on sort of that like social responsibility aspect, if a consumer had to choose between the same product that's being sold by a social responsible brand versus one that's not, and even if that product is more expensive, they will pay for it because of the belief behind, where that money is going and the passion that they have for making sure it's going to the right type of brand that they believe in.
Which is really interesting when you see those stats and whether they will or will not hold up during a cost of living crisis as well. I've seen similar stats that suggest, especially on the sustainability front, that is really important because people are in it for the long game and they don't want the planet to explode in like 50 years time. And they understand that maybe they have to do without things a little bit less. But when you do buy those products, it's the same with the fashion world, right? They've been saying this for ages. Buy a quality jumper that will last you several years rather than one that you'll need to replace every season. And
I'm a big fan of
for a while.
Yeah, it's like that capsule wardrobe. I've even become sort of committed to that because of what I see on social media and in the news and things. So it's that type of like I said, social responsibility, but really being able to prove it in multiple areas of your business. I think I see women-led entrepreneurs, leaders just really taking that seriously, and they're reaping the rewards of that as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And staying on the topic of women for a second, do you have any advice that you can share from looking at the Lightning 50 and speaking to your clients that you can share with other women out there that are looking to either launch a business or throw that side hustle into the foreground and really grow? What is it that, advice that needs to be given to help women really smash that glass ceiling and know that they can go and do it and be just like one of those amazing brands on the Lightning 50?
Yes, I know. It's such a good question, obviously very timely. And it's one that there's tons of information out there that really, I think women would benefit from leaning into, understanding, researching, talking with one another about. But I think for myself, and particularly what I've learned from the women that I've spoken with, is confidence. Like just the research that we see is women are generally harder on themselves. So whether it's like in our 360 reviews, or if we're interviewing for a promotion, starting a new business, starting a new product line, I think we tend to question ourselves. I know I do this. I sort of catastrophize some things that have, could be something that could happen to my career, or even falling victim to imposter syndrome, something I'm very familiar with. But I think what I've done in my own career is really help to be very literal when it comes to analyzing the success that I've had. And so I'll remind myself of what I've achieved and use that to really help remind myself and justify why I'm in the running for a promotion, or why my voice should be heard when I'm the only woman in a room with 20 men. So, I've gotten incredible accolades from other male and female leaders who I really admire in my career. I've been promoted multiple times into senior roles. I've had my ideas been followed and executed and actually be like a very significant contribution to the business. And I'm an expert in my field. And I think for a long time I would feel uncomfortable saying all that out loud and sort of listing my CV out in a way, just because of what I mentioned earlier. We're sort of taught as women, I think, to downplay some of those successes, but that does absolutely nothing but make me really doubt myself and even have others around me doubt me. So I think shifting that mindset to a place of real pride and confidence has helped me grow my career and also become a better leader, especially in those times of imposter syndrome when I'm starting to doubt myself. Yeah, that's been a really powerful reminder that I also try to share with other, women that I'm managing and leading, or even speaking with at sort of networking events. Be confident.
Oh, I definitely can relate. And I'm sure many women out there can relate as well, is that little voice in the back of your head that even once you've listed that off, I could hear kind of tiny bit of hesitance from you. It's like Chief Marketing Officer at Brightpearl. You just need to kind of Chief.
People would ask me what I would do, and I would say, oh, I run a marketing team for a software company. And, my wife was like, no, you need to be proud of what you're doing. Yeah. And so now it's, I'm a CMO for a software company. So it's very, it's important. And
the male leaders out there that are listening to this podcast as well, what advice would you give them to pass on to the women in their teams to help them it's a similar kind of thing, just help build their confidence, point out when they've done well, really just encourage, right?
Yeah, I think it's so funny. This, again, timely. I've had this conversation recently just because of International Women's Day and with some of my colleagues, and they ask the same question, what can I do? And I think it comes down to recognizing and using your privilege. So as a male in a room, as I mentioned earlier, that's not exaggeration. I'm often in rooms with 20 men and I'm the only woman. And as confident as I am to sort of interrupt and make my place seen and heard, I really, really value when a man will interrupt an interrupter and say, wait a minute, Sarah let's give her an opportunity to finish what she was saying. Knowing that in general, that privileges could be more respected than if I tried to say it. And I've seen that really work wonders with my own experience. And it helps give me the confidence that I need to also sort of say my piece or make my point. So yeah, I would say it's more about, you can help a woman with her confidence by using your privilege to make space for it.
It's not just about being well done. Yeah,
exactly. It's certainly, it's a process, but I think that what that does is also allow other men in the room to sort of think about it in a way that's a little bit different, as opposed to it's the woman saying, hey, you just interrupted me. Like, I'm not done with the point yet. It's something different. And I've seen that work really well.
So true. I have a similar example, actually. As a journalist, I'm always at events trying to, get people to speak to me, to put in a feature or whatever. And I remember going up to a gentleman who was, I think he was CEO of a certain company, saying, oh, I'd love it if you could contribute. Do you want to speak to me on the record for this piece? And he was like, well, yeah, I am capable of doing that. But actually, would you mind speaking to somebody who works on my team who's a woman? Because I think she is just as capable, if not more, in her area. And I'd love to get her in the newspaper or magazine I was working for at the time instead. And I remember being at that event, just almost got tingles. I was like, that's the first time that's happened.
Absolutely.
Quite often you speak to, you ask women that are in senior positions and they're so busy, probably because they're looking after families alongside a senior job, and they just don't have time to maybe self-promote themselves and speak to a member of the press. So I remember really being, this is what we need more of. Yeah.
And I think too, it's a good reminder that even myself, like I have privilege as a white woman and making space for minority women in a similar scenario. So that privilege sort of like passes down. And it's been a good model for me as well to make sure that I'm making space using my privilege for a benefit, right, for others. So I love that story. That's so awesome.
It's really good. And someone once said to me, it's about being open to understanding, and it's okay about not necessarily saying the right thing or worrying about X, Y, and Z, but being open to being corrected or open to making the world a bit better place, which, as I said at the beginning of this podcast, is what we all need a little bit more of. So some great examples there for all our audience listening. What are let's go back to some of the companies that we were on the Lightning 50, and obviously we love talking about tech on the Lightning 50 podcast. So what are some of the technologies that those high-ranking SMEs were using that was making them really help, smash those glass ceilings and those targets?
Yeah, I think this is such an important thing to call out, because I mentioned at the beginning, one of the benefits of the Lightning 50 is it also sort of creates this like collected group of people that have seen success, and then they've also shown what tools they use to help contribute to that success that then other brands can really lean into. So this really plays in nicely to the benefit of the Lightning 50 for that reason. To answer your question, obviously we saw the big winners that we typically see. You've got Shopify and Klaviyo and Google Analytics, Facebook, Instagram, the whole sort of meta space, which have always been on the top of these lists and are there for a reason. And absolutely, I think what's cool about the Lightning 50 is, and those ones even the more common, is that some of them are being used in ways that is not traditionally how they are used with the wider commerce space. So, finding different ways to use Shopify or Klaviyo, maybe they're using for email marketing, just because that's sort of what they're known for, but they also offer text message marketing, which we're seeing grow more and more. So I think if you've considered some of those technologies before in the past, maybe they weren't the right fit for whatever reason, I recommend going back and looking at them. They have innovated, they've added new functionality, they sort of broaden their horizons in a lot of instances, and could probably be in some cases a really good fit depending on how like the brand has progressed. So that's a big one. And then obviously, I think the other one that was really consistent was Inventory Planner, which is an especially important tool right now. Really, inventory planner is important when times are really good because it's helping you, sort of maintain that growth, but also when times are a little bit rocky because it's all about making your dollar go further. And typically brands, the biggest expense that they have, one of is inventory. And there's this fine line between having enough stock on hand to like meet the demand of your consumers, but you don't want to have so much that it's like sitting in your warehouse just taking up cash when you need all the cash you can get, especially right now. And so I think we heard a lot from winners of the Lightning 50 talk about how important that balance is, and that tools like Inventory Planner can really actually not just take them from a growing business, but also a profitable business, which we know profit margins in this space are usually pretty tight. So yeah, I think that was just like a nice reminder on what an incredible tool this can be for growth and profit.
Does Inventory Planner also help in terms of all the supply chain issues that are hitting various industries all over the globe at the minute as well? Because you never know what's going to come around the corner in the UK at the minute. We're shortage on tomatoes and cucumbers, so who knows what it is on the other side of the world? Who'll know what it's next week? So yes, is it able to help businesses pivot if they can't get a certain product in, or even if their product is the materials is knock-on effect? Does it help them plan for those issues as well?
Absolutely. So what's great about Inventory Planner is to sort of back up a little bit, it analyzes the like anticipated demand that you'll have for a product by looking at historical representation that factors in things even like seasonality and promotions and things like that, discounts, etc., so that you know exactly what you need to buy from those suppliers to be able to fill that demand. But obviously we know, as you mentioned, what a crazy sort of world it's been on the supplier side with all the supply chain issues that we've had. And so, yes, Inventory Planner's a great tool that helps you even sort of analyze what supply chain performance looks like. Am I late on these deliveries? Am I on time with these deliveries? And potentially give you some good talking points to have conversations with your suppliers, which is something we really recommend, like just picking up the phone and saying, hey, I'm wondering if there's any flexibility here, or helping to really diversify your supply chain, which I think we all learned back in the days where we couldn't find toilet paper and paper towels and things. So yeah, I think there's definitely opportunity for it to support on both sides of something that's very critical and timely for what's going on right now.
That's so true. I was just like remembering those days that feel like kind of like they were a century ago, that's
I still get PTSD from like running out of toilet paper. Like we always have just like an obscene amount of toilet paper.
I was about to say, were you one of the hoarders, Sarah?
I was, admit it.
So obviously, as I say, if we don't laugh right now, we might actually cry. So apologies for we're not being insensitive. We're just, as you say, PTSD. But obviously there's, we've got the memory of COVID in our brains, and, it's worked quite well for some companies in terms of being able to really push that side hustle. We've talked about that already, but it has had that combined with the invasion of Ukraine and so many other things just keep coming, never mind the burning of the planet. So I'm going to ask you, are there any other challenges out there that we should be? I feel like you're in a kind of a computer game and you're constantly like dotting from like Mario Kart or something, avoiding getting attacked by one thing or the next. So obviously, we've got cost of living seems like a really big one at the minute, because at the end of the day, we're dealing in retail, and retailers need customers, and customers need spending power. So are there any words of warning that we have as we go into the next year? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's an important thing to discuss, because I think it does feel like that sort of Mario Kart journey a lot of the time. But one of those things that is we see sort of challenges coming up is around this concept of excess stock that a lot of merchants have post holiday. So we've been calling it sort of this like post-holiday hangover, where because of all those issues that you mentioned, typically a very exciting time, the holidays for this space were even more challenging because a lot was unknown. Like, what's the spending power really look like? We know that inflation is happening, but people are still spending money. So you're trying to sort of like predict kind of what that looks like across the world too, because it can be very unique in different places. And we found, actually, we researched the topic specifically because we were hearing this more and more. And we saw that 25% of excess stock was written off altogether by retailers at the end of 2022. And so I think recognizing that that is a challenge that we're anticipating and that you're trying to avoid waste by either discounting products, donating them, selling them at a loss, et cetera, by really using tools that help you plan and look forward and have sort of a very rapid response to pivot quickly when you either need to like fill gaps of orders that are selling more than you thought, or, fix the gaps that are occurring on the other side. So I would say, I think for at least the next like 3 to 4 months, the excess stock issue is going to be one that's hot topic for sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially with the Christmas gone by, which is the first like normal Christmas post-COVID. Planning for that in a cost of living crisis after inflation must have just been impossible, because I remember reading various analysts saying, well, people are going to spend whatever because they've missed out on so many Christmases with their families, but equally the money's not in the bank, that they might not be able to. Yeah, I can totally understand why that's been a bit of a headache.
And for so long, I think a lot of merchants use sort of that just-in-time model, like because the supply chains were relatively stable. But when you're waiting to, you're trying to balance not having too much stock with the supply chain challenges, it just makes the challenge a lot more difficult. And so, really understanding what your slow moving stock is, and making decisions to kind of adjust for that, and recognizing that you could potentially have a lot of cash tied up in that excess stock. I mean, we talked to brands, smaller brands that sort of said they had anywhere from 50,000 in excess stock at any given day to hundreds of thousands of excess stock. That's a lot of opportunity for you to potentially better manage and then invest into areas of your business that will help you grow and be more profitable.
True. So plan, and plan some more for an increasingly unpredictable future.
Exactly. It's like predict the unpredictable.
Exactly. So before we wrap up, I just want to touch on any more trends that you're seeing for 2023. Obviously, we've already touched on like sustainability and technology. There's a lot of like kind of Gen Z excitement out there at the moment. I remember that the AU vodka guys, they were doing incredibly well, like from my neck of the woods actually in the UK, and also wellness, right, which again I think ties into the Gen Z and people post COVID. Everyone just wants to take a minute and make sure that look after mental health, physical well-being, a huge trend, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's you're spot on. I was actually listening to a podcast the other day with the AU Vodka team, and I think they had it was back in October of 2022, and I think they said they were the UK's fastest growing premier vodka, and that they had like surpassed Grey Goose, and really were like sort of moving internationally as we saw them do. Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. Furniture Box is another one, sort of that Gen Z space where it's about like the sustainability and, environmental aspect. But I think we also see when you look at those brands, they really leaned into new technology, like not to sort of tie it all back together, but I guess to do that, is we've seen the tech stack for a retailer change exponentially over the last 10 years, right? Even in the last 2 years, there's the emergence of just new tech. And I think what I've typically seen, particularly with Gen Z brands, is their willingness and excitement to like really embrace that technology and say, I'm not going to sit at my desk for, 20 hours a day and try to fulfill these orders when I could actually have a tool that can come do this for me. And I get to then go spend my time doing the creative, like fun stuff of the business that I'm good at and that I prefer. And so I think that there's, it could be anywhere from, new technologies that help with sort of operations, but even embracing new marketing channels like TikTok. Like you see, such an emergence of that space, and the brands that got into it early are really doing incredible, amazing things, and have seen huge success with influencer marketing and things like that. So I would say it's, try to willingly embrace the technology that exists. And as I mentioned earlier, like go back to tech that you've looked at before, because it will have changed. It will have improved. It would have gotten even better, and potentially could really bring some cool stuff to your business that maybe you haven't considered before.
So true. And that's probably a brilliant spot to end on this afternoon. Sara, thank you so much. It's always wonderful catching up with you. I love talking about all these trends, especially around International Women's Day. So a huge thank you for your time. To our audience out there, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure you catch up with the rest of the episodes of the Lightning 50 e-commerce growth hacking podcast, wherever you get your podcasts from. And until next time, goodbye.